the last few weeks. So there is a lot of curiosity and to interest to explore different ways of AAC, and a lot of parents came forward to looking for help because they didn't even know that letterboarding and these other ways of communication exist. So they were told that speaking is only the way out. So so we thought this would be a very important way to expose to other ways of communication.
I know. So did you find out a way to record or no?
Yeah, my husband actually joined on his laptop. He's doing a screen record, so that should work, I think.
Okay.
Thank you for your interest in a session like this.
Thank you for taking time.
Keep going. So let me know when we can start.
We have still some people joining in.
Yeah.
Hi, Srishti.
Hi, Srishti. Yeah. Full hour. Yeah.
He's actually typing some opening remarks as we speak. I don't know if you can see him on the keyboard. He's actually typing in the keyboard. There is this iPad in front of him.
Sorry, I could not hear it. He's typing on the iPad, you said, right?
Yes. He's typing on the iPad some opening remarks. So here is the Bluetooth keyboard that we hold, and then the letters get on the iPad.
Please read it out for us when he's
ready.
When he's done.
We can with Bluetooth connect.
Triveni, you would like to start? Would you like to start? We'll just.
I'm ready to start.
Maybe people will just join in the next few minutes. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So,
good evening, all. Today we have with us a very young and amazing guest who's mature far beyond his years. Please welcome Swarit Gopalan, an amazing 11-year-old who identifies as a non-speaking autism advocate. Swarit literally found his voice through the letterboard. He has been sharing his thoughts and lived experiences with autism and about life in general on his FB page, Swarit Gopalan, My Truisms Unfiltered. I have known his parents, Arun and Jenny, for a while now, and I can say that they're actively involved with Swarit and are ardent advocates of the use of AACs for our children. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all and to Jenny, Arun, and Swarit. Please share your communication journey with us today. Looking forward. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Swarit is typing on the keyboard now, and the opening remarks that he has is grateful to be sharing space with you all today. I love introducing spelling to as many as possible. And he's still typing. So I'll keep going and continue to read what he types on the board. So this is the presentation I prepared for the evening. These are Swarit's words. I have a dream that one day there will be no more voices in prison, no rest until justice pervades every moment. So I thought it would be apt to have that as the title when we share our story today. So the agenda for the day, is one second, figuring out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, you're able to see the screen? Yes? Okay. So this is the agenda. I think so. Triveni, are you able to see the screen and others?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so so I'll start with our story before Swarit's communication and our life after Swarit's communication, our learnings, and we received some questions for parents, and Swarit has answered some of the questions that he received this morning. And we can also do live spelling with Swarit if you have questions to Swarit after this presentation or any follow from the question that he has already answered. So this is our journey, like many of you here with kids on the spectrum. Early on at 2.5, Swarit was diagnosed to be on the autism spectrum with the typical, textbook symptoms like there was no speech, no social initiation, obsessive interest in few things, and the sensory processing challenges, and severe auditory sensitivity, and to name a few. So he was diagnosed to be on the severe end of the spectrum at 2.5, and then we started speech therapy, OT, and some words and sentences came at 3, but it was stagnant until 9.5. So there were very few words and very few phrases that came at 3, and until 9.5, it never went beyond the very basic needs and wants. And he was never able to express his thoughts or feelings through speech until 9.5. And as like all the other parents of autistic kids, we spent several hours of speech therapies. And Swarit has written about it, about what speech therapy did to him on the April series that he wrote this year. And I can share that link later with you. So, as parents, we were giving him a nurturing environment, and we decided to do only relationship based approaches like flow time, RDI, etc. But we did not treat him for his age for academics, because from age 3 to 9.5, he was only taught alphabets, writing his name, was his primary IEP goal, and counting from 1 to 10, addition, basic 1 plus 1, and basic stories like, Sam went to market, got apple, and baked apple pie with his mom. Very, very basic stuff until 9.5. This is very hard for Swarit to go through that, so I think he's a bit, difficult at this moment listening to the story, but we'll get through this quickly. So we tried every phonic method available, but could not even get output for basic cat, mat, sat. So when we started a spelling journey, we still did not, move away from cat, mat, sat. We still had all those phonic methods and, flashcards and everything with us, thinking that if the spelling did not work, we can go back to the phonic method and somehow make him read or, speak at some point. And we were certain that he had no aptitude for learning languages. Okay, so that was our life before Swarit's communication. Our life completely changed after Swarit's communication. So one thing that we decided was about the AAC devices. We were asked to try AAC devices, but we thought it was very limiting and it would not result in his robust communication. So, parallelly, we were reading about other spellers in the US who were writing blogs and Facebook posts and everything. So, we realized that there is something, these spellers are saying about how cognitively intact they have always been. And the letterboard was something that helped them, come out of the prison of silence. So we decided that if we ever want to put our efforts and time in something, we would like that to be something that gives him means to proper communication, including thoughts and feelings, and not restrictive to just needs and wants. So that is how we ended up, researching about the letterboard methods that were available, and we learned about rapid prompting method, RPM, and spelling to communicate, and we resonated with spelling to communicate. And in June 2021, we started doing spelling to communicate with Swarit. He became fluent on the board in less than 6 months' time, and everything in our life changed after that. So the first time we knew that Swarit could actually spell words, first time we understood that he had been observing and listening to us and his surroundings all through his life. First ever time we knew that he could do math, because all his life we couldn't go beyond counting or 1 plus 1 until that point. And first time we realized that he wanted to make friends. Until that moment, as a parent, I never even imagined that he's capable of making friends, because the system and the doctors and everybody had told us that lack of social initiation was one of the primary symptoms of autism, and they like to be in their own world and may not be, interested in making friends. But on the board, he told us that he wanted to make new friends. And first time we knew that what he likes, all those years we were guessing and making decisions for him. And once he was open on the letterboard is when we actually discovered who our own son was, almost at the age of 10 for the first time. And he was able to say why he cries and, what is happening, why the dysregulation happens, and everything about him. So he started leading everything for us. So that's the life after communication. And I wanted to highlight the learnings as parents, what we learned. The first thing was a lot of unlearning had to be done, and to trust this process of spelling and what other spellers are doing, what they are writing, the words of the spellers. The very first lesson that we had to learn or unlearn was language is cognition and speech is motor. So we have been told until that point that speech, when the output is not in speech, then there is a lack of cognition inherently, and that is the result of no language. And even the school psychologist and many people that we worked with felt that Swarit's aptitude for language was nil, and since he could not reproduce anything through speech. So only after learning about spelling to communicate, we understood that language is cognition, and it has nothing to do with speech. And speech is just a motor, it's a finest motor ability. And kids on the spectrum, kids who are autistic, they find it difficult to, deliver things in speech because it's a very difficult motor activity. And the second thing that we learned was presuming competence. Presuming competence is the least dangerous assumption one can make. So that really resonated with us. And that it's just a simple, mind switch, saying, believing that that individual can think, learn, and understand, even if they're not able to prove it. So it was initially hard for us to make this paradigm shift of presuming competence. But once we started reading about many spellers and the stories of families like us, we decided to make that the least dangerous assumption of presuming competence. That Swarit is interested in learning, he can think, and he can understand. So that was the core of this spelling method. And the second thing was brain-body disconnect. The spellers that say that their brain and body are two different entities. Swarit has a poem written on the same topic, which I'll share later. So the brain-body disconnect is, the brain has always been intact. Cognitively, they have always been intact. It is just the body that is unable to carry out the brain's order in some sense. So it's more a motor disability than cognitive disability. So when we started looking things from brain-body disconnect angle, everything in our life changed. The way we spoke to Swarit changed. So we wouldn't be addressing Swarit and saying that, hey Swarit, it's getting late for school. We would be rushing him initially and making him realize that school starts at 9 o'clock and you have to be at 8:45 in the car and things like that. Because when we understood brain and body, we really understood that Swarit knows that he has to be in the car at 8:45 to go to school at 9 o'clock. It is just his body that is not, moving. So when we started addressing his body instead of treating him like a cognitively, lacking person, his temperament and, everything changed. And we also felt better about it, doing the right thing. And the next learning was listening does not have a look. That again took a lot of time for us to learn, because we have standard indicators of how we should, look at things, and there are indicators of engagement and understanding and listening. But kids like Swarit do not do that in a typical way. They don't look at your eyes or pay attention. The body does not respond to things that they are listening to, but they are always listening. So even if they're in a different room, we realize that Swarit listens to things, and Swarit has always been observing and listening to the life around him throughout his life. Even though he did not look like that. Even in this moment, he's on the floor stimming, but we know for a fact that he's listening to the presentation and listening to me speaking. And the next learning is motor coaching. It's a continuation of the brain-body disconnect. As I said, we are not addressing his cognitive, his self anymore, but addressing his body. So if he is stuck with something, we say, instead of saying, you're not moving in spite of me asking, and all those lectures that we were giving before, we just tell, let's get your right leg forward, talk to the body, break down into simple motor steps, and make the body do the action instead of explaining things over and over again to them. Okay? Can you, so lips are closed. And feeding the brain. So sharing information, TED Talks, podcasts, audiobooks, documentaries, and age-appropriate cognitive content, which we failed to do until 9.5. But we started feeding the brain after we learned this process, learned this method. So right now, we play a lot of audiobooks, even though he seems to be stimming in a different room or doing something else. We know for a fact that he's listening. So cognitively rich content is always given to him through some form, podcast or watching documentaries or TED Talks or sharing information for that matter. We treated him emotionally for his age, but we never shared information or any discussions with him until we knew that he was cognitively intact. But now we started discussing about the things that we discuss in the family. He is part of the conversations, and that's the feeding the brain. And practice makes permanent. Consistent practice with patience and perseverance is something that helped us succeed in spelling, because it's not something that you can go to a therapist and leave the child and let them work with a child for an hour and get back home. It's a way to communicate with your child. It's the primary mode of communication. So consistent practice and patience and perseverance helped us succeed in this. And regulation. So we never knew that our anxieties, doubts, and stress was feeding them, feeding Swarit. So one of the primary component of spelling to communicate is they call the person who is holding the letterboard as communication and regulation partner. They help them in being regulated. So so we started doing a lot of inner work, addressing our anxieties, doubts, stresses, and stay regulated when the spelling process happens, because it is a very meditative process where you need to track every letter they poke and form the sentence based on what they poke. So you have to be present in the moment, and we had to work with ourselves to get to a point where we are regulated and not hyper vigilant like we have always been with Swarit. Swarit and Swarit's body all those years. So that used to be our default way of acting. Many of you can resonate with it. We have just dealt a life with just surviving for many, many years, and started living only after communication. And another learning is trusting the process and following the motor cognition hierarchy. Motor and cognition is considered as a seesaw in spelling methods. So speech has the highest motor, hence accessing cognition through speech is very difficult for the kids with apraxia, so or brain-body disconnect or autism. So removing the motor demand of speech and just introducing the gross motor movement of poking, just the shoulder works, just poking in and out and in and out by pointing the letters, help the motor demand is reduced, and they're able to use the cognition to convey their thoughts and feelings. So that is the philosophy behind this motor and cognition hierarchy. So a lot of parents, when I speak to them about this method, they kind of jump into, why can't you all directly go to typing, or all those my kid already types, what I asked them to, and so they come up with all the other ways of accessing motor, but we felt that the people who found these methods, there are currently 3 methods: RPM, spelling to communicate, and Speller's method. All the 3 methods work on the same fundamental principle of motor cognition hierarchy, and there is a reason for having the motor cognition hierarchy. And when you trust the process and follow the hierarchy, the success is 100%. So jumping 1 or 2 steps would result in failure. So getting the clean pokes and getting the fluency in the letter boards and then moving to typing helps them to openly communicate and fluently communicate their thoughts and feelings on the typing than directly jumping few motor steps and going directly to typing. So we trusted the process. So we had to completely surrender ourselves in this process and follow what we were asked to, what was coached to us by the practitioners. So that I feel was critical in us, in helping Swarit get his communication, relatively faster. And the growth mindset, and we had to be very, very open about what we did not know and accept and reflect on things, constantly learn and unlearn in this process. And the primary source of information and education that we relied on was spellers. There are hundreds and hundreds of spellers online now. Like Swarit has a Facebook page of his own where he shares his thoughts, and he's educating us about his lived experience of being a non-speaking autistic. And there are so many spellers like Swarit who are using the online platforms to share their lives with us, and we felt that they are the real experts, so we relied mostly on them to learn about them. So these were our learnings, and I'll quickly run. Yeah, no, there are some questions. So you had already sent some questions for me, so I'll quickly answer them before I ask for more questions. So did you try Pictures AAC software before trying S2C? What were the motor challenges faced when you started with the letterboard? So we were asked to try AAC. We bought the AAC device and kept it in the house for almost 1 year, and we could not get ourselves into trying it because intuitively and also logically we felt that Swarit should be given a communication mechanism where he can communicate anything that he wants to and not be restricted to whatever pictures that had was fed into the AAC device. So I understand that AAC devices have their place when people have no communication, but even if people who are using AAC devices, I would strongly suggest that they should go beyond AAC and find a robust communication for open communication of thoughts and feelings. And what were the motor challenges faced when you started? There were a lot of motor challenges, a lot of initiation challenges and loops that Swarit had. And as I said, in our learning, we learned about body coaching and the mind-body disconnect. So that helped us with overcoming the motor challenges. And how did you come to know that Swarit can read and he understands what is being talked about? We came to know that Swarit can read and he understands what is being talked about only after Swarit answering questions during the process of spelling. When we started spelling, we read a paragraph and ask questions, and so only through that process we understood that he has been understanding. And once he got a little bit fluent on the board, we asked him few known questions from our lives or from the world, and he was able to answer, and that made us realize that he had been watching or listening and understanding all throughout. If you have a minute, I can quickly tell an example where this really got into our head. So we were watching cricket in mute because of Swarit's auditory sensitivity. We don't increase the volume typically when we watch TV. But only after the letter board, we just realized that, we wanted to ask him some questions. We just asked what we were watching, and he said cricket and what was the game about, and he's explained, and the countries that played and the scorecard. He was explaining who was the standing batsman and the score and everything. So that moment is when we knew that even there was no auditory input to him, he has been reading things from TV or whatever was there in the surrounding. So that was a turning moment for us to really believe that he was reading and understanding. How inclusive is the world for non-speakers in your experience? Would you like to answer? Yeah, I'll let Arun answer.
I think how inclusive is the world for non-speakers in your experience? I guess if it is a spectrum, it is probably right now not even on the lower end of the spectrum, but it is completely outside of the spectrum. Simply because I think there is really no understanding of non-speakers. Because I think, as Jenny was alluding to, the prevailing thought is that if there is no language, there is no cognition. And I think if there is no cognition, you pretty much give up on those kids and adults. And I think that's kind of they are, then I think they continue to be marginalized in the society in all possible ways, regardless of their age. Of course, it gets more difficult as you age because you are not that cute little kid anymore. So again, I think it's really not inclusive. We can only specifically talk about the US. And so what we have tried to do in the community that we are in fact, we went to a different state because they had a community of non-speakers. So that is how you create your own community, because there is really no inclusion otherwise.
Dinesh, how did you help him build vocabulary? As I said, we did not do anything to build his vocabulary. Even after starting this process, we were sticking to cat, mat, sat type of 3-letter words. But I think the environment that, we used to listen to news or watch TV, watch series like we all do now. He has learned it from subtitles, from the TV that we watched, or music that we listened to, or news that we listened to in the car, and the conversations we have in the family, and the schools that he has been. Some kind of storytelling or certain things happened in the schools that he went to. So he has learned from every possible way by observing the world. But we did not do anything. Only after he proved to us that he has been, learning and spelling, we started feeding his brain by playing podcasts and audiobooks, etc. But before that, we have to admit that we did not do anything to build his vocabulary.
Yeah, he actually answered this question himself yesterday in the event, and his answer was from all possible sources.
And what about his sensory needs before he could communicate? How did you help him cope with it? So before he could communicate, it was all, the understanding that we had. So we did every listening therapy that is available in the market, and we went from biomedical doctors one after another. We did everything, dietary changes and everything, thinking that that would help him. So I'm not very sure what helped or what did not help, but the single most thing that really changed our lives is the means to communication that he has currently. Other things did not do much. One thing that we were very, very cautious about was we did not put him in a setup where he was tested and rewarded for actions, or repetitively given the same thing again and again. So we selected schools that would nurture him and treat him for who he is, and respectfully. So that is something that in spite of few difficulties that we had in terms of comfort and other things, we chose to go the difficult route just because he will be treated well in those environment. And music and other horse therapy, typically whatever families do to occupational therapy and other things we continue doing. But nothing changed things for us.
Yeah, I think, like even more fundamentally, I think what we assume to be sensory need may not be a sensory need. So I think that reevaluation will happen after they start communicating and once you start understanding them more. For example, I think his whole auditory sensitivity was not always auditory sensitivity. Sometimes he was preemptively closing his eyes because he was not going to like the answer that was going to be given to him. Or if he was anxious about a particular situation, he would close his ears, and that's not because of any sound or anything related to the auditory processing. It was more of anticipatory anxiety with something. So again, I think there are a lot of different ways or different needs for which he used to close his ears. But I think as parents, we always used to assume that it was auditory sensitivity. So we kind of piled on all possible auditory interventions, as well as we would always put his headphones on, the noise cancelling headphones on him whenever he closed his ears, which is really what not he was asking for.
How did you work on open communication? My son can answer questions from a given text or choose a choice, but can't express his thoughts himself. As I said, we followed the hierarchy, and once the answering questions from a given text came fluently on the letterboard, the next step was to go to open questions, starting with small questions from the text that we were reading, and then we slowly moved into other open questions and creative writing. But following the hierarchy and sticking to the method helped us get to open communication. And while we were doing that, as I said, we were rigorously working on our inner self to be staying regulated, to get whatever he was spoken clearly. If we are not staying regulated, if there is inner noise, if we are agitated with something, and if we are not present in the moment, we felt that getting to open communication and capturing what he's pointing was not happening. So while he was working on known questions and answering known from the text, the sentences and everything, we were also working on ourselves, and that led to open along with his fluency in pointing. So both things happened simultaneously.
I think I would just like to say that I think all of us want open communication, but that cannot be the goal in itself. Because I think when and this is just from watching other parents, I think when open communication becomes that like all prevailing thought that you're after, I think there is definitely a sense of anxiety we bring into working with our kid, which translates into their own dysregulation. So I think the focus should be, as Jenny had pointed out earlier, should be on perfecting the process. How accurate can they poke on the board? Then I think it's just only a question of time before you start seeing those open answers from them. And I think, again, as Jenny alluded to, it is as much a question of us being able to kind of receive their answers as it is about them being expressed. So I think they might be ready to express today, but we might not be ready to accept it. So I think it's kind of the internal process that we need to go through without putting ourselves under any additional pressure or stress or external noises is equally important.
How does using a letterboard translate into conversational language? So lips closed a little bit. So Swarit's primary mode of communication is letterboard. So anything that he wants to tell us, anything that he wants to talk to our family and friends, everything is through letterboard. So we have the letterboard with us all the time, and we just use the letterboard for him to have conversations with anybody. So even in public, so yesterday we went to Loyola College and had an event, and there was live question and answer. He used the letterboard to have conversations with people there. And we are in India now meeting families, and he's having conversations with everybody that's visiting him through the letterboard. So that's just like the way we speak, letterboard has been the tool to have conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also the intentionality of the parents. I think you make it into a conversational language by kind of making it into a tool that is aiding in conversations. So I think you put the board in front of them anywhere you go, then it becomes a tool to converse. I think I'll just give you one example that we tried. So when my parents visited the US, we asked Swarit to ask them a question every day about their lives. And so we would that was a sacred time for us in the evening where we would sit together and Swarit would ask them some questions and then they would answer. It was such a beautiful bonding experience for all of us because we even had not asked those questions to my parents before. And again, that's how it becomes a conversation when you kind of put that in the right setting. And when they cannot initiate bringing the letterboard themselves, which a lot of them cannot yet, Swarit cannot do that yet, you kind of create situations where it can become conversational and hence motivating to communicate.
And we were also conscious that the letterboard is for communication primarily, and the byproduct is academics. So we use the letterboard primarily for communication and less for academics in that sense. So because the more energy that we spend with Swarit, and Swarit's energy to point letters has always been for communication, to getting to know him and connect him with people and things like that. And we do not do much of academics other than feeding the brain by cognitively rich content. We don't test it through the letterboard. So that saves us energy and saves his energy, and we are able to use it for other communication purposes alone. And how do you work on steps which may have an OCD signature? So there are stems like what Swarit is doing now. So that he says is very important for him to regulate. So we don't stop those stems, or sometimes I tell him to tell his body to close the mouth, instruct the body to really slow down, or close the lips or things like that. But other than that, we don't completely eliminate it, because he says that stimming is like our breathing. Would you ever ask somebody to stop breathing? So we don't stop that kind of stims, but there are loops that he does. So we have our phone here, and he would go to his favorite song again and again, and that becomes a loop, and that becomes sometimes overwhelming and overload him with sound and other things. So when it becomes a loop and it is not very helpful, then we kind of redirect it by giving him a purposeful activity. One purposeful activity is spelling. So that has a purpose and it has some motor movement going on. So that really helps him to get out of the loop that he is in. And sometimes when it is not spelling, we just ask him to go get water from the kitchen, or can you keep this, or throw this trash, or give him anything purposeful, and try to break the loop. So Swarit, when he's having loops, he tells us that help me get out of the loop. So anything that becomes obsessive, like a loop, doing it again and again, we try to stop. But the time that he stims on his own, we do not stop much.
Actually, Jenny, there was one more question after I sent you the document.
Yeah.
This is specific to ABA. I don't know if you would like to answer it. So the parent wanted to know if you have ever tried ABA with Swarit, and if you continued with it or you gave it up.
Yeah, so we did not try ABA at all with Swarit. He did not align with us from the beginning. So even though we were, but in the US, ABA is the primary, you know, autism schools and everything in US is based on ABA. So insurance covers ABA, schools are based on ABA. So almost 90-95% of the people with autism have to go through ABA. But that's what I told in the beginning. I mean, while I was talking, that we chose the harder path, like floor time and RDI, a relationship developmental intervention. Those and sunrise philosophies of sunrise. We did not do it directly, but we followed some basically taking the child's lead and doing it. So even before we knew or knew a lot about ABA, when he was early, when he got diagnosed at 2.5, and we had early intervention therapists come home and give therapy to him. One followed ABA and the other one followed floor time. So even before we knew the term floor time, Swarit responded only to the therapist who did floor time, an occupational therapist who did floor time. So the 45 minutes that she sent, he would be super engaged because she would be leading him, taking his lead, and cognitively challenge him right, when he was 2 years and 9 months. So we could see that he was totally engaged. And the other person who did ABA, he would just run away the minute she comes in. And even if we try to force him to do some ABA type of activities and rewards, I think he responded very poorly. He would that would end up in a meltdown, and he would really not do. To an extent, people would think that he had pathological demand avoidance. But we understood that it is more to do with the way he was treated, and so we did not send him to any school that had ABA, and we did not do any therapy that had ABA. So we just did tried other things only. Any other question?
Thank you. And one more question was, are you homeschooling right now, or just one more question that I got. Are you homeschooling right now, or you are sending him to a school?
So we lived in Pennsylvania when we started this spelling to communicate. So he was going to a school there, for autistic kids, and that did many things for sensory motor, challenges, but it did not treat him for his age academically. But the minute we knew about Swarit's cognition through the spelling, one day we started with 1 + 1 and then graduated to, prime number, square roots, composite number. We just introduced few concepts and he started doing math in just 1 hour. He demonstrated what he's capable of, and that changed our, perspective completely. And we uprooted from Pennsylvania and moved to Florida in less than 3 weeks to send him to a school that uses spelling to communicate as the primary mode of communication. So we never homeschooled Swarit. We were just choosing schools that would have least emotional impact. But we did not realize that not treating him for his age and not giving him cognitive content would also give, cognitively, emotionally, it would be an injustice to him that we did not realize. But with what information we had, we chose to send him to schools that did not have ABA, but never homeschooled, and currently he's going to a school with S2C as the primary. So you would have seen in the Spellers method, there was one of the founders of Spellers method and the Spellers movie, there was an occupational therapist, Dana Johnson. She founded the school Invictus Academy in Florida, and it has only Spellers there. So he goes to a school, and he's in the 4th grade. They give whatever any other neurotypical 4th grade would be given, in the educational system. He's been given that in school. Vision therapy, we have been to vision therapies before. I mean, not vision therapy, just for consultations before, but we didn't have to do a lot of therapy. Because the school's founder, Dana Johnson, um, she works on ocular motor a lot, and she helps the occupational therapist in the school to do some exercises to help with the vision. But Swarit says that ocular motor is the challenging one in terms of both spelling, because he gets very tired. He's unable to look at the letter boards, or lights, and everything bothers him. So that is a challenge for him.
Sorry, so are there any is there any specific care taken, like for example in the school classroom, in terms of lights, or lights on the board or things like that? Is there anything like that which is done?
No.
Yeah, so there are no such accommodations in school in terms of any environment modifications, but they do kind of assess each kid for their ocular motor needs. Are they able to kind of keep their eyes on the keyboard and etc.? And then I think they also have some ocular motor exercises which are specifically targeted to the eye, such as you kind of track maybe a colored pen or something, right? I mean, just one random example, but they do have some activities like that.
What about any assessment on primitive reflexes?
So that is outside of school, and there are MNRI centers in Orlando, right next to where we live. So most spellers that we know, the parents take them on their own. Nothing related to the school, or school does not do anything about.
But for Swarit, you have never done MNRI.
We did not do MNRI. Yeah, right. We did not do MNRI.
Okay.
We did other massages and
right.
Other things like that, but did not go into MNRI.
And no history of seizures or anything which you felt could have affected his language processing or the actual physical speech or anything?
So Swarit had PANS. I don't know if you're aware of PANS and pandas. So for 2 years, our life was completely taken away by PANS and pandas. We had to go through very, very difficult time with things that cannot be explained now.
Yes, I understand. Yeah. Yes, I understand.
So, we don't know if he had absent seizures during that time. It was completely, it was not Swarit, it was something else that made him do a lot of things. But we had to treat him for PANS. Okay. And only after he came to baseline with PANS, we were able to confidently start working on spelling. Until then, our life was just in a survival mode, very, very difficult. We were just assimilating all the information, reading about spellers, and following the stories of families mainly. And then when a minute, in our life, we thought, okay, this will keep on going. Let's just focus on getting the communication. And that's when we started investing in this method 100%. And now, even when PANS flare comes, Swarit is able to tell us what is happening. So he's able to talk to his doctors directly and tell them what the symptoms are, what supplements work, what supplements do not. And we were attributing everything to PANS at one point, but now we feel some of it is PANS and not everything is PANS. Some of it could be, the emotional trauma that he had been in this world, being underestimated for many years, and things like that. So the healing process happened after the communication for all of us. We had to talk openly about how we were, dealing with things, and we healed together in this process. And writing the series actually was very, very emotional for him to talk about his life, going through the past. But I think that also helped him heal. Okay. When he finished, he was a different person. From April, he's been a more empowered and healed person, we feel.
Thank you so much. Thank you and all the best. As I wrote on the Facebook post also, he's a beacon of hope, and you also as parents are beacons of hope.
Yeah, no, he's also the beacon of hope for us. So we are nothing without him. Yes. I would just like to add one thing though. I think on the concept of the primitive reflexes and things like which we call complex motor generally. Yes. I think the best practice is to not do things in a sequence. Like let's do MNRI, let's kind of fix the motor before we do spelling. I think we have seen a lot of families just start spelling even though they have complex motor needs. I think what we are seeing is that kids kind of feel empowered to punch above their weights in that sense. Even though they have complex motor issues, they are training every sinew to communicate using the letter board. And they're able to overcome their, presumably the motor challenge that they're going to, which I think we can still parallelly work through MNRI and stuff. But I think if there is a parent there that is thinking of this as a sequential process, I would challenge you to think differently, because that's the feedback we see from other spellers with complex motor issues, where like families have started spelling, the kids are spelling, and the families continue to work on MNRI and things of that nature.
And also, sorry, I wanted to ask you. So initially when you started S2C, would you suggest that we do lessons which are of interest to them? Because my son did a few sessions of S2C with a practitioner. The first session, he was very good. After that, it was all sort of downhill because he had so much of anxiety and behaviors as if he just didn't he had no interest in, like there was one lesson I particularly remember, which was about dance forms in India. And frankly, I was sitting over there and I was like, oh my God, this is so boring. And I was thinking, I'm sure my son also thinks the same, So do you feel that we must start with sort of something which would be of interest to them?
Yeah, I think there is a hidden connection, right? You felt that it is boring, and I think maybe there is some level of anxiety that he picked up from you, right? So there is that all this hidden, so they're like super sensitive to how we feel. That aside, I think it's all about the cognitive content. So the more intellectually stimulating the content is, the more they are kind of there in the session. So maybe it was not about the dance forms. Maybe like even with the dance forms, he was looking for higher level content. Maybe it was a basic explanation of dance, but he was looking for perhaps more, even in dance, right? So it's not about dance, but it's about what level of explanation into dance that article was getting into. Maybe he was looking for something more. And that's kind of something that we have consistently seen. If there is dysregulation during a spelling session when you're reading some content, it typically is because that content is not intellectually stimulating enough. So just try higher level content.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, Swarit has answered some of the questions that came this morning. Yeah. So, along with being a super good poet, are you also an avid reader?
Yeah, I think we can. We do. Yes, okay. I love to listen to audiobooks, lots of podcasts as well. I love history and philosophy, like Yuval Noah Harari specifically. Also enjoyed Harry Potter a lot. What is your message to a 4-year-old non-speaking child and to the parent as well? For the child, he says, I love you and I see you. And for the parent, please treat your child like a neurotypical 4-year-old. Just support where needed. Most importantly, find a reliable communication mechanism. Love to you as well. What sort of changes can we ask a school to work upon while accommodating a non-speaking child? So he has actually written extensively about it. So he has asked us to kind of use his post from the April series, which we will share. This question, philosophers will say that humans can never be silent because the mind is made of words. For these half-witted logicians, silence is no more than a word. To overcome language by means of language is obviously impossible. Turning within, you will find only words and images that are parts of yourself. But if you turn outside yourself to to the birds and animals and the quickly changing places where they live, you may hear something beyond words. Even humans can find silence if they can bring themselves to forget the silence they're looking for. John N. Gray's quote, when asked what's his take on this, he said, I agree emphatically. I find a lot of solace in nature for this very reason. When you are in tune with nature, life is beautiful. I love this quote. And what's your message for parents for non-speaking children who are not ready to use AAC for communication, who are still expecting their child to speak? He says, our life has been transformed with my communication flourishing now. Life is more worthwhile and meaningful. Every family with a non-speaker should try this, as it is cruel to be in the prison of voicelessness. The word is poorer without the wisdom of all non-speakers. What are your dreams and ambitions? He says, dreams are powerful and they keep me believing what is possible. I have attempted to articulate my own dreams for non-speakers. I dream of becoming a poet and a writer to advocate for non-speakers. What helped you acquiring your vocabulary? How can a parent help their kid? He said, from all possible sources. And parents should help by treating the child for their age, play cognitively rich content even if they are in a different room. What calms you if you do not feel regulated? The fact that the caregiver understands my dysregulation and coach my unruly body helps me to calm down. And when I hear you talk, I feel people with autism are pretty much normal. So what really are your challenges other than motor and sensory issues? The fact that the society does not understand our cognitive abilities is the single most challenge. If I must define autism, I would say it is a sensory motor disability with complete cognition. How did you develop your hobbies? Motor work needs help from caregivers, but my interest in music, poetry, and cooking developed on its own. How do you work on your motor issues? What has helped your overall body coordination? Purposeful activities, including spelling, help me. High intensity interval training helps with my body regulation. And just in terms of opening remarks for you all, he wrote that he's grateful to be sharing space with you all today. I love introducing spelling to as many as possible. It has been life-changing for me, and I hope for you as well.
I just wanted to add one thing about non-speaking, because some people think that only people who do not have speech completely, right, like 100% no verbal communication, are termed as non-speaking. But the umbrella of non-speakers, according to Swarit and the fellow spellers, is the people who do not have any speaking, speech 100%. Along with that, there are unreliable speakers who can have speech, but it's mostly scripted and or loops and other things. And there are minimally speaking people who can actually answer to a few questions, but they are still not able to express their deeper thoughts and feelings. So all those categories come under the non-speaking umbrella. So when I talk about this method to people, they say, okay, I have my kid have speech, and I was that parent. We were that parent thinking that introducing AAC or any other form of alternative communication, including letterboard, would hinder my child from speaking for a very, very long time. We came to know about the letterboard in 2017, and it took many years for us to get into doing the spelling to communicate, and only in 2021 we were able to 100% do it. So because we really resisted when the speech therapist said go for AAC, we said no, there is speech. I don't even feel my son is not having speech, because he communicates to me in some form, but we would have completely missed if we had not.
Yeah, and I think the key to that, which I guess many of you on the call probably would nod your head when I say this, I think a lot of hesitation for parents that have minimally speaking kids to try AAC is because you feel that you're giving up on speech, right? And you feel that your kid will never kind of go past whatever they have. Actually, it's the reverse logic. In fact, working on the AAC actually helps build some of the pathways that are not activated through speech therapy. So when you kind of enable communication through AAC, that increases speech. We have seen that with Swarit too. Some of his purposeful speech has increased, and he is actually using more words through speech than before. So I think it's interesting. When we thought we had plateaued over the years as we were trying speech therapy, just in the last couple of years, as we have started using spelling, we feel that his speech is also kind of, some of the words that he uses, he had never used before. So we kind of feel that that is also organically developing.
And also about the age, there are so many spellers who are 25, 30, 40 and 60 who have started spelling. So there is no age limit to spelling, is what we learn from looking into the speller universe there. They keep at any age, parents bring, and they are able to, once this automated movement of pointing is there, they're able to access the cognition. And not just autism, there are so many Down syndrome kids who are spelling. In the Spellers movie, you would have seen Sid, whose mother, parents are Indians, living in the US, and he has autism and Down syndrome. And there are several other Down syndrome kids who are proving that they are also cognitively there. So yeah, those information I just wanted to add. Yeah. So about practitioners, any reliable S2C center in Hyderabad, Bangalore, or is it primarily available in US? So I know there is a practitioner in Coimbatore that is getting trained, and I'm not sure about any other practitioners currently, but we are thinking that we would go back to US, talk to the founders of Spellers Method, and also Spelling to Communicate, and see how we can bring it to India, either through
yeah, I think we may have to get creative with the models that we are trying for this to be economically viable in India, because I think some of the charges that that are being charged in the US for a 1-hour session might be economically infeasible for many. I'm not saying for all, but I think it will be economically infeasible for many here in India. So I think we are going to go and talk to some of these practitioners and see what we can do. And I think one method that might, I'm kind of thinking out loud, is one thing that might work is we can maybe get some parent volunteers from the US who can kind of help maybe review videos that you all send of spelling, and the practitioners then maybe provide some higher level feedback instead of the practitioner doing all the work. I think we can come up with some sort of a combination so we can make it more accessible to everybody in India. Again, I'm not saying that it is going to be inaccessible to all, but I think it will be inaccessible to many if kind of some of those rates translate into Indian dollars.
Excuse me, I wanted to ask you, have you ever thought of doing RPM, and do you know what is fundamentally different between RPM and S2C?
We did not do RPM. We didn't find a practitioner in RPM, so we could not do it. So I don't know no differences between the two from experience, but I would say any letterboard method has the same fundamental things of presuming competence, feeding the brain, and working on communication. So whatever method that we are able to access would still make a difference. So yeah.
So Jenny, the question is because a bunch of us got, we went through a workshop with Soma a few weeks back,
Yeah.
So it was very extensive. We had about 4 days of sessions. Each day we had about 4 to 5 hours
Yeah.
of meetings with her. So we are just about starting with RPM. So we just wanted to know what you think about it and how it has helped Swarit.
Yeah, Swarit did not do RPM. We started with spelling to communicate and just sticking to that. But I know a lot of spellers in Swarit's school are from RPM background, and many families online and many spellers that are RPM, trained by RPM, and we just love any letterboard method. It's all about resuming competence and giving cognitively rich content and training the motor for the communication to come out, and whichever method is accessible for us, um, I would just get on board with it and start the process.
Yeah, I mean the real key is do you have a consistent training mechanism and consistent feedback mechanism, right? And again, I think it's all like down to the parents ultimately to kind of make this happen. But it's really the training and support and the type of consistency and the structure that is available with that. I guess it's kind of between those two methods that you choose.
And even economically, for us, of all the things that we have done for Swarit, this was the least expensive thing because it is just parent driven, and we had to do like 10 to 15 sessions with the practitioner to learn to do this method. And once we internalized what has to be done, we were able to just practice daily. The first 50 days we did everyday spelling sessions, reading a lesson and doing. And after that he went to a school that had spelling, so we started focusing more on open communication at home. And so it really did not cost us much for getting trained in spelling to communicate. Just
Yeah, and I think this is very intuitive to probably everybody in the call. So I think one key mindset shift when you start doing something like spelling, it's that it is unlike any other therapy like occupational therapy or equine therapy or like even speech therapy, where you just take them to the session and that's it, right? Like there is not much you implement from that at home. At least we were that way. Many of you probably are different already. So this is a very intense parent-driven process where I think from a best practice perspective, the kids that have kind of gone through this journey relatively quickly have had parents do this with them once or twice a day religiously and kind of follow the structure. So I think we cannot overemphasize the fact that it is a huge commitment from the parents. But again, out of maybe the 250 things that we have done with Swarit, this is what we can kind of put our like signature on to say that it works. I mean, if you ask us, did biomedical intervention work, or that auditory sensitivity therapy work, did tomatis work, etc., we would probably not have a great answer to you. But if you kind of ask us if S2C works, the answer is all over the place, like even in its own Facebook page. So I think this is really one, like if you had to pick one that you want to do, it would be like some type of spelling method, whether that is RPM or S2C or whatever you choose, again based on where the resources are available to you today consistently. This is one that you should do.
Hello, excuse me. I wanted to know how, his writings are just, I'm a big fan, first of all. His writings are just so eloquent. So I've also been doing spelling RPM with my son for the past 5 years, and we are stuck now with open communication. But how did his, this flair of writing, how did you develop that?
He will answer.
How did you develop the flair? While he types, maybe you can ask if you have another question to Kenny.
Yeah.
How is his daily busy schedule in the sense, do you keep like hobby times, or you keep some study time?
So he goes to school 4 days a week, and so whatever academics that he gets in school is what he gets. We don't do anything academic at home. Mostly communication, like communicating to parent. I mean, talking about the day to us through the letterboard, and having few questions and answering grandparents for a few minutes. And then he is into poetry now, and every Friday he meets a poet, and they have poetry exchanges. It's not about coaching or anything, they just interact. They read a poem and talk about it, respond to the poem, and do everything through spelling. So Zoom, on a Google Drive, he would be answering and the other poet would be questioning. So that is one thing that we do. And he's also learning piano from an autistic adult from Canada who teaches again through Zoom. And she understands the motor aspect of difficulty in learning piano for autistics. So she breaks down into simple motor um, steps and teaches piano very well. So other than poetry and piano, we do not do much. That's some music, and he's a big Ilayaraja fan, so he listens to a lot of Ilayaraja songs at home. And audio books or podcast or whatever we listen to or play to him is something that happens in the evening. So mostly unwinding. He takes a lot of time unwinding from on school days. And after we started a Facebook page this year, he decides what to write for Facebook. And April month was very busy with the series. He was writing one article every day, so that kept him busy. But he is also interested in advanced math. He has been telling us over a year to help him with doing math, but we haven't had the time and capacity to focus on that. So currently it's been just a piano practice for a few minutes, and spelling for mostly communicating to us, or Facebook, or some poetry work that we come up with. And weekends, we live in Florida, where there are a lot of Tampa area, where there are a lot of spellers, and there are events that happens every other week. So we meet speller families. So our entire life is surrounded by spellers, and everyone that we interact would be associated with spelling in some way. So we lived in that bubble for 1.5 years, and this is the first time after Swarit's communication, we have come outside of that bubble and traveling. We went to Japan for 2 weeks to visit our family, and then few weeks in India. So we were very anxious to do that, breaking that bubble and coming outside and exposing ourselves to the world. But I think communication has really helped. Even if he had dysregulation inside the flight, he's been able to communicate that to us. And even before going to anywhere, we are able to set some expectations and get input from him on how to address his body when there is dysregulation. Once he gives that command or self-command to himself about keeping his body away from food, or there are loops and impulses that he still has, and we talk about all those things, and that helps him with regulation.
Yeah, I think I'll just add one more thing to the whole, the academic portion, especially since I think in India academics is pretty. It's a goal of many parents. I think it's an important goal for many parents. I think the key to some of these, I think the key question that many of us ask there in the US, especially when we have a speller in a family, is even if you accelerate and let's say finish your 12th grade by age 12 or 13, which these kids are capable of doing, they're cognitively there, then what, right? Like for them to be college ready, their body needs to be ready. So sometimes it is really important to go slow, to go fast in that sense, so that their body gets through purposeful motor and through spelling and through everything in between, their body is ready to sit through the demands of the college. So I think we would be doing a disservice if we rush them on the academics only for them to end up being unsuccessful in the college due to their body. So I think it's a really important thing for all of us to think about when we like put academics first. Which again, I don't know whether anyone in the call is doing or not, but it's something that we have constantly also heard on the academic question. And Namit, to your question, Swarit types, the feedback I continue to receive empowers me to keep searching within and outside.
That was beautiful.
And to your question on the routine, purposeful, the high training also helps him a lot. So we make sure that there is some movement happening. So motor coaching and feeding the brain and spelling are the three primary things that we are focusing, and we could really see high intensity interval training, simple squats and not the one that adults do. It is simple circuits, squats and wall push-ups and some bicep curls or simple things like that. Then repeating the circuit. So he does it for 10 to 15 minutes, alternate days, and that really helps him. On days that he does high intensity interval training, he's more regulated than other days.
Yeah, actually there are a lot of good free videos on spellers.com and I think we'll share that for high intensity workout. Again, I think there are two things that any of you can start doing immediately today. I think one is the whole presuming competence and changing our mindset that we all spoke. Even like right after you go from this call, you can start playing podcasts and audiobooks, etc., that is relevant to your kind of spellers or I think your kids' intellectual needs, right? I mean, if they're 17, play something that a 17-year-old would enjoy, or if they're 10, do something for a 10-year-old would enjoy. That I think you can do immediately. Just change your mindset, presume competence, just go. The other thing is really this exercise, right? So I think if there are a lot of, again, videos with instructions. For example, like squat is not, Swarit, do squats. Squat is, hey, Swarit, bend your knees, get your hips down into the chair, right? Then push your kind of feet down and then get your hips up, etc. So I think that's kind of what you do. It's not like, Swarit, let's do squats 5 times. It's breaking down those instructions into...
You're languaging it.
Yeah. So really that. And I think and addressing the body and not him, because he needs that. And I think there are kids that might be able to squat immediately too. Again, I think not going one way or the other. But I think the good thing with the videos on spellers.com is they kind of explain to you how to break down those instructions. And then I think that also gives you ideas for other areas in life. For example, if you want them to go to the kitchen and they're not going, then you kind of know how to address their body versus talking to them, hey, why are you not going to the kitchen?
Could you explain how we do that? Because my son has that problem.
Sorry?
Could you just explain how you would direct him to go to the kitchen? Because my son also has that problem. He can't go to a particular place, though he knows what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it is really like, I mean, I would, like, let's say, if we want to go, we want him to go to the fridge, right? I would basically first focus his eyes, like, hey, eyes on the fridge, for example. And then I think, put your left foot in front and then right foot. Let's follow with the right foot. Then let's do 1, keep moving. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Like when I say 1, keep moving. Simply again, I think it's just almost like a dance, right? Where you are kind of performing the music and he's performing the dance, except that you are kind of doing that for walking. And at no point would we say things such as, don't you understand what I'm asking you to do? Or why are you not moving, right? You won't use any of those things or even convey any of those emotions. You would be calm and regulated and just focus on breaking down the instructions into kind of instructions for sub-instructions for the body to follow. And in some cases, even it's putting the left foot in front, might be like even broken down into lift your left knee and move your ankle to the front, right? Something like that. So it's just like it needs that level of thing. And the other thing that Swarit has given us feedback is even there, don't overdo it. Like when you say put your left foot in front, don't say that 7 times within a minute, right? Say that and give me time to respond. So I will respond, because sometimes when you think that you have figured out motor coaching, right? But you kind of overdo it. You say, hey, put your left foot in front, put your left foot in front, and then I think he gets overwhelmed and he's stuck more. So I think we need to kind of calibrate all this to where our individual kids are.
I have a question for Swarit, fellow autistic here. Swarit, first of all, I love your work. Thank you for speaking up on behalf of everybody. Initially our parents don't get us, and they do with good intentions a lot of bad things. But then they start at some point realizing and working on themselves. In my opinion, that has been the star intervention in your case and also in my case. What is your opinion?
Yeah, Swarit wants to hear it again. Can you?
Yeah, is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I am fellow autistic. I love your work, and in my opinion, parents, although they have good intentions for us, they do a lot of bad things initially. But then at some point, my parents understood, realized, and they started working on themselves. And I see the same case with you, that your parents also started realizing and started working on themselves. And I think, in my opinion, that is the number one star intervention. What is your opinion on this?
Yeah, he's answering. Keep going. I think that also has been true. Has to be. Has to be. Okay, 1 second. So he says, I think that also has to be true for all those that interact with you, including extended family.
You're right. And the professionals that we've gone to, right?
Right? He says yes, absolutely.
And one more very wonderful thing that I noticed, you said, I love you and I see you. Mm-hmm. And I think that only happens to a human being when they feel seen by other people. Like when they have that experience, they can give that experience to another person. What's your opinion on that?
Beautifully said.
Thank you for being so awesome.
Thank you.
And I know how hard this is. So, thank you.
Thanks, Rakshita.
Hi, I have a question regarding motor planning. First of all, thank you so much for emphasizing on it. I just wanted to know from where did you begin the motor planning, training the body, and the tip that you gave, that breaking into steps and talking to the body and not to them directly, was a very big tip for me, because this was the mistake that I was doing with my son, I feel. But from where to start if you haven't started the motor planning, teaching them how to plan their fine motor skills or gross motor, how to do that? I'm totally at loss about it.
Yeah, I think a good place to start, I think we have to improvise, right? Because there is no manual that is out there that says this is what you follow for Swarit, right? So I think what we have done is you understand what it is. So you understand that you need to coach the body and not the person. And you need to break it down into steps, right? So there are, of course, resources in spellers.com and all that, which kind of talk about some of this. But in terms of specific instructions, you need to kind of figure it out on your own. Like, for example, if your target is getting them to move from one place to another, just figure out just again, ask yourselves, if you were to kind of go from place A to place B, what are the motor steps you would take, right? For example, like you would look at where you need to go, then you would maybe start moving your legs, or maybe etc. I mean, again, I think if you need to, like, let's say, open the door of the fridge, for example, you would kind of have your eyes on the handle, then get one of your hands to the handle, then you would kind of move the door back, or like pull your elbow back, etc. Right? So I think I think putting yourself in the position of doing that action, and then what are the steps that are involved, and then I think just in like doing those instructions, again, it's just like a question of trial and error. The very fact that you start addressing the body versus them, I think helps them to move towards you. So they understand that you are making that effort, and then I think they start responding to that. And then I think in some situations it makes it impossible for their body to listen to that instruction. Then you think about breaking it down even further. But I think I would just encourage you to try, because just the very attempt you are making in addressing their body versus them, they get it, right? And because they are cognitively there, they understand that you are making that effort, and then they start responding. Like, I mean, I'll just give you an example. Swarit has been up from 2 a.m. today, so he's very tired. So just the fact that when he sits on the floor to stim, and every time I had to get him up, it was a huge effort for him. But I still like motor coached him, and then I think he got up every time. So you saw him going down and kind of coming back up every time. He's like totally done for the day. But his body is still making an effort to be here and answer questions and all that. And he made that effort every time to get up and come here. And the way I said it was like lift your hip up and kind of move your body up, etc. And I did not say, hey Swarit, don't you understand that there are people waiting in the Zoom to listen to you? Why are you kind of making this scene? Why are you kind of sitting there? I didn't say any of that. I basically addressed his body to come back up. And every time, even though he has been up from 2 a.m., his body responded and he came back up. So I think that's really an example of how their body, in spite of all the struggles that they are going through on that particular day, still responds to a respectful kind of tool.
I just wanted to know, have you ever asked, breaking into steps and, telling him to move his hand forward and then take it back? Has he ever felt offensive, offended, regarding giving those instructions into such small steps?
No. He has written about it in the April series as well. I will share that with you. I'll share it with Bindu and she can share it with you on motor initiation. And he has given clear instructions on how to break down and what helps with motor initiation. Okay. And even in school, he has given a hierarchy to follow. So he says, first break down, do these things. Then use countdown to do. If I still do not respond, give me time. I don't exactly remember the steps that he has given, but he has given his teachers and people working in the school with him to follow steps, start with this and go from this. And he clearly understands, and all the spellers, they emphasize on the fact that body is a different entity, mind is a different entity. So as long as you treat my mind for what it is capable of, they want help with the body. So they don't get offensive when the body is treated. So in fact, we keep saying, hey, Swarit's body, get up. We don't say Swarit, get up. We address Swarit's body most of the time. And most spellers have named their body a name, a different name, so that they can differentiate between the two entities. And they agreed to the fact that mind-body disconnect is the single most challenge that they face, and addressing the body differently helps. Coaching it helps. So I have consolidated about the learnings that I listed here. I have consolidated on my own experience along with the links from Maya's Spelling to Communicate. Related links that you can read from experts. So we are not trained in these methods or not practitioners. What we have learned is, as parents, in this journey, whatever we learned is what we wanted to share. But I have links to the IASC, experts, at least the founders and other practitioners of this method, whatever they have written, and also spellers, what they have written about these topics. So I'll share that document with you, and that will also be helpful, whichever area that you want to focus on. That would be a good beginning to, start implementing.
So I think for what are some guilty pleasures of Swarit, he says eating a lot of peanut chickies.
I want to say, Swarit, it's absolutely all right to take space and say, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because you're tired, darling. It's absolutely all right to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he absolutely knows that.
Yeah, totally he says no.
He says no.
Does not want to. Yes.
Thank you, parents. My name is Sarika and I've joined you from Secunderabad. I'm really sorry I couldn't find time to join you early. I wish I would have done that. But I was with my son working with him, and this is the time he has gone for a walk, so I could join you in. Do I get a recorded version of this entire program?
Yeah.
I'll send that to you, Sarika.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That would be a great help. I have an 11-year-old son who's cognitively very good, and thank you so much, parents, for explaining the fact that they have a body and mind disconnect, and how to guide them for their motor activities, and how to motor regulate them, because this is what is lacking with my son. I always think that intellectually he is so high without me even after teaching anything. I have done GLAD for him, and he cleared GLAD with 100% marks. I'm a special educator. I became a special educator for him. But unfortunately, in India, it is intellectual disability and not ASD specifically. And that is the reason why, we special educators also, despite being a mother to an 11-year-old child, we do not understand them properly. thanks to parents who have taken this step forward to, get Swarit online and have our questions answered. And similarly, my son also answers all these questions. He would type and explain everything beautifully. But like you said, that if you want them to go to the fridge or to the kitchen, I would simply say go to the kitchen. I'll tell him 10 times, and then he would not do. Sometimes he may not even want to get up. But like you said, the body has to be trained. So that is so apt. And I realized today that that is really something that I really want to work with my kid. And I would request all parents also to, work with their kids, because these are beautiful souls who are intellectually very high, but just because they have a disconnect between their body and their brain, they are often mistaken to be not understanding the commands that we give them. Thank you so much, parents. Thank you so much, Swarit, for your time. And God bless you, beta.
Thanks, Sarika.
Swarit, I also want to thank you for, your mother told me that you woke up at 2 a.m. You're still with us, answering all our questions patiently. Thank you so much for that.
He's saying thank you for your generous time. I'm going to go and eat dinner.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jenny and Arun and Swarit, for taking time and being here with us. I know it has been busy, a very busy weekend, but still you made time for us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, absolute pleasure.
Yeah, so this is actually Swarit's number one priority. So this is also like by extension our number one priority. So we want to again share our learnings with as many people as we can. Again, we won't claim to be saviors, or we won't claim to be people that will take all of you like to places that you want to be. But again, I think we can be a little bit part of the process to help you kind of maybe not make the same mistakes we did, etc. So I think that's kind of, and again, I think we'll go to the US and talk to practitioners and be a resource for you there and see what we can do together. But ultimately, it is a movement, and all of us are in it together, and all of us will do this together. I think it's kind of how this all works, and of course, we will be led by Swarit and like all of our kids, right? They are going to be the leaders in this movement, and we are just going to be alongside them, just marching along.
Thank you so much, and I can
Thank
share
you so much.
Presentation. And Bindu, if you are able to get the recordings, you can
share
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll also.
Thank you, Swarit. Thank you.
The other resources that I said I had. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Enjoy the rest of your stay in India.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Doing that.